The royal family's official mourning period following the death of Her Majesty the Queen has ended. And we all know what that means. Archetypes is back.
Oh God, what a sick fest.
An evil, nasty, dirty woman by the name of Meghan Markle.
And I don't know where to start with this episode. A couple of things I will say. First of all, it was well worth the wait. Everyone takes the Meghan Markle story so seriously. And I, for one, think it's a crying shame because this is the height of life imitating art. Archetypes is Spinal Tap, Alan Partridge and The Office all rolled into one. I honestly believe that it would be impossible to make a parody of these conversations between Meghan Markle and her guests that was funnier than the real thing. This latest episode was spectacular. She's outdone herself. I listened to the whole 46 minutes and not a single bit of it wasn't hilarious. So I don't know if I can dissect this in one video. I might have to make several videos about this one episode because it was genius. Unintentional genius.
Growing up in Los Angeles, these are the types of foods I would eat. Tamales, ghormeh sabzi, larb, matzo ball soup, adobo, along with your usual kid fare of chicken nuggets and fries and burgers and pizza.
Stop!
I promise, I gotta stop interrupting. I can't go 5 seconds. Everything she says makes me crease with laughter. And it's ridiculous. She's just listing foods. She's listing foods, and I'm missing myself. But it is a bizarre way to start the podcast. I mean, you got to admit that. It's going to talk about Asian people in this podcast, which apparently she knows loads about. She grew up around Asian people. She was just around Koreans all the time. Now, I don't know why. And so she starts by listing Korean foods. That's how the podcast starts. I would eat all these Korean foods. Plus burgers and fries. I'm really relatable.
And the types of languages I would hear? Honestly, more than you can imagine.
More than your little minds can imagine.
From Armenian to Farsi, Korean, Spanish, Hebrew, Los Angeles, despite how segregated it sometimes felt, was full of culture that you could see, feel, hear, and taste on a daily basis. The multitude of Asian cultures was a huge part of that for me. My weekends were spent in Little Tokyo or having iced teas in Thai Town.
Sounds like you were the victim of oppression.
Or sitting with my friend Christina Wong and her parents at a local Chinese restaurant. I remember this so vividly. And them teaching me why chow fun with dry noodles was so much better than chow fun with wet noodles.
Why on earth would you remember that vividly? I can't imagine that being a very long conversation. The dry noodles are better than the wet noodles. They just taste better. Wow. Fascinating behavior.
Now, obviously, I had a real fixation with food. Not much has changed there.
Hey, Meghan's PR team there, showing their worth. They've done their research. Humans like food. Definitely relatable.
But more than that, I had a real love of getting to know other cultures. And part of that, my mom and I, we would often go to the Korean spa together. Now, for those of you who haven't been to one before, it's a very humbling experience for a girl going through puberty because you enter a room with women from ages 9 to maybe 90. all walking around naked.
I think maybe you should have spoken to a lawyer before doing this podcast, Meghan.
And waiting to get a body scrub on one of these tables that are all lined up in a row.
I'm not finding this part of the podcast very relatable, I gotta say. Maybe I wasn't oppressed enough as a child. I certainly don't remember going for very many full body scrubs at my local Korean sauna as a child. Just special occasions.
All I wanted was a bathing suit, which you're not allowed, by the way.
The rule is you have to be naked. Okay.
And once I was over that adolescent embarrassment, my mom and I, we would go upstairs, we would sit in a room, and we would have a steaming bowl of the most delicious noodles. And we'd look around at all of these other women. These beautiful Korean women who had embraced the generational tradition of the jjimjilbang.
We'd sit around and observe these elegant creatures. It's not a fucking zoo, Meghan.
And shared it with one another. Now, that was a part of the Asian American culture that I knew.
But in today's podcast, I want to focus on Asian Americans' violent subculture. I infiltrated the LA faction of the Japanese mafia, or the Yakuza.
I hadn't known all the stigmas and archetypes that so many women of Asian descent specifically had faced until many, many years later. Those terms, those ideas, those stereotypes, they weren't familiar to me. Like the ones we see in so many movies and throughout pop culture.
Your name is?
Fukumi.
Austin Powers, seriously, that is an example of American attitudes towards Asian people. That is a genuine stereotype. It's not irony on steroids.
Oh, behave, baby.
The price you pay for bringing up either my Chinese or American heritage as a negative is I collect your head.
Ah, Kill Bill. God only knows how Asian people suffered as a result of Quentin Tarantino.
Movies like Austin Powers and Kill Bill, they presented these caricatures of women of Asian descent as oftentimes over-sexualized or aggressive. And it's not just those two examples, there's so many more. But by the way, I'm not the only one who's taken notice.
Okay, so listen up, Asian Americans. I know that most of you think that Meghan Markle was the first to notice Asian stereotypes. She probably drew your attention to it before anyone else. But apparently there were other people who noticed it too. I know, I was as surprised as you guys.
This ancillary dark character in the side of the shadows, playing this evil, exotic force. We sort of have to take those roles if we want to work at all.
That's comedian and actor Margaret Cho. And what she's referring to is the Hollywood trope of Asian women, which she knows all too well. One of which, as you just heard her say, this quote-unquote evil, exotic force, is more commonly known as the Dragon Lady.
Yeah, that's not a thing.
Do you want to walk us through what the origin of Dragon Lady is?
Well, Dragon Lady really comes from this sort of fantasy of Orientalism. It's actually a character that it's similar to the femme fatale in that, a woman who is beautiful and deadly. Because we can't just be beautiful. We have to have, it has to come at a cost. And it's kind of like Evil Queen adjacent, but it's also so pinned to this idea that Asianness is an inherent threat, that our foreignness is somehow gonna get you. The mystery and the exoticism of it is part of it. And unfortunately, that trope has really stuck to film, but also to Asian American women or Asian women.
And this is why Asian American women and Asian American people in general are consistently underperforming academically, professionally. It's because every time we see an Asian woman, we might think that we're an open, accepting society, but in the back of our head we're thinking, ugh, it's a dragon lady.
The dragon lady, the East Asian temptress whose mysterious foreign allure is scripted as both tantalizing and deadly.
I mean, as far as racial stereotypes go, I mean, we know none of them are good, right? But Asian women, I would say, got off pretty lightly. They're sexy and dangerous. I'd imagine that most of us at some point in our life have received insults, racially motivated or not, that are worse than being called dangerously sexy.
This has seeped into a lot of our entertainment.
My God, she's right. You know, I never noticed it. You open up your browser, you turn your TV on, put the radio on in the car. Bloody, you can't move for dragon ladies. Dangerous, sexy Asian ladies everywhere.
But this toxic stereotyping of women of Asian descent, it doesn't just end once the credits roll.
They don't just end when the credits roll. They're in your dreams. Dangerous, sexy dragon ladies. You sick son of a bitch.
Stay with us. We'll see you after the break.
What break? This is on Spotify. You should keep saying this throughout all of the podcasts. We'll see you after the break. And then they just come back. There is no break. You're not on the radio. So we're going to get into a little bit of the interview with Margaret Cho, and I think this is definitely going to have to be a two-part video because there isn't time. But I'm going to give you a taster of the amazing conversation with Margaret Cho. And there's no way I'm not making a video about this. It's unbelievable.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Welcome. I can see and hear you too.
Thank you. I'm such a fan.
Oh my gosh, me too. Oh, hello. Cameo by
Lucia Caterina.
Lucia Caterina.
Well, you all know what laughter sounds like.
So that's Margaret Cho and Lucia Caterina. Margaret is one of those stand-up comics who's always had a distinct voice. She got her start in her hometown, San Francisco, in the early 90s. She was this one lone Korean-American woman comic in an industry that was mostly full of white men.
I don't know, there were no black men? Full of men, yeah. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that men are generally more funny than women. But it's not just white men, is it? There are some funny black men. Just a few.
I'm so excited to talk to you, honestly. I mean, when we were conceiving this show and just the idea for me of archetypes and these labels that so many of us are confronted with constantly that try to hold us back. And there's so many of them, from bimbo to diva to slut.
Yeah.
Any number of them. Have you ever experienced being called or identified as any of those, for example?
I can see why Archetypes has overtaken the Joe Rogan show. That's how Joe Rogan should be starting his interviews. No, there are so many things that you can call somebody. Tell me, Brendan Sharp, has anybody ever called you a cunt? Hello there, Theo Vaughn. Has anyone ever called you an asshole? I mean, not really, no, not that much. Maybe a little bit. I mean, I remember I had a family of raccoons living in my basement for a little while. So that kind of got a little heated on a couple of occasions, but, I'm pretty sure they were urban raccoons. I think I'm going to end this video here now because I've lost the plot a little bit. But I am going to get into the second part as soon as I can because it's really worth a listen. The interview with Margaret Cho is really good. It's a really good show. So I'll see you for that one.